What's up, amazing people? My name is Anne Murugi and I'm proudly Kenyan. You're listening to For Better 254, a space for young Kenyans to learn and learn with the name of bringing forward a better Kenya for us and for generations to come. How are you guys? How have you all been? I know things are going and ongoing, but how have you all been? I hope you've been alright. Personally, I've been goody goody, goody goody good. Goody good. I don't know where that's coming from, but yeah, my point is I have been alright. Uh, as I mentioned in the previous episode, I will be going further on the topic I was on in the last episode. If you haven't listened to that, I recommend you do. Thank you for doing that. And if you have Asante, I hope you learned something. And I've been waiting for this episode. All right, guys. Today I thought it would be helpful to share with you more on the system, how it comes to life, how it has been created, and hopefully I keep pushing you to wanting a better country and continent and world, because it's all for you guys. All right, because our collective awakening is also needed, and if we believe we can achieve, I believe we can achieve. Let me get into it. I'll start by defining white supremacy, because that's what I talked about in the last episode. And white supremacy is the system whereby white people ideologies of life dictates the political, the social, and economic sectors of other people with a darker skin tone, and mostly black people, due to the belief they are superior to these groups of people. That's white supremacy. White supremacy has not always existed. And saying that, I just remembered I was listening to something recently, and apparently there were black Vikings. Yes, guys, there were black Vikings. How mind-blowing is that? But I also do guess that's the reason why so many guys are so much glued to Games of Thrones, I think. I don't know. I assumed maybe that's why. Anyway, back to white supremacy. White supremacy has not always been there, but it manifested itself throughout history and up until now through the acts of colonialism, imperialism, neocolonialism, and capitalism. But you might be wondering, Anne, what do these terms mean? Colonialism is the ambush and control by one power, in this case the Europeans, over other people, in this case Africans, and their resources through exploiting them and forcing their language and cultural values upon them. This exactly explains why West Africans speak French, East Africans speak English, South Africans speak Dutch, and so on and so forth, because of this effect of being forced language and cultural values. Neocolonialism, on the other hand, is the modern form of colonialism. Instead of directly ambushing and dominating, we depend on these colonial powers to determine our economic growth, for internal security, for defense, etc., etc., which they also disguise through the large sums of loans, foreign aids, and an accountability, oh my God, as long as they get what they need from the continent. And saying that, let me take a sip of water, guys. And saying that, have you ever wondered why, unlike many nations, we have no minimum wage? And why we are a source of cheap labor? When I was doing a project in school, we had to come up with a company. And when we were thinking of the company to come up with, we had to think about where will we get our labor from. And guys, it was so quick to decide Africa and Asia. It was like, that's no brainer. Then I was thinking, wow, this is actually weird. And that's exactly how neocolonialism works. It serves them, and it has been in history. And since it has been in history that white men are the good people, so we don't dare speak about this thing or the atrocities. But the reality is, this aid that they give us, for instance, is what divides us to poor and rich, is what promotes our corrupt politicians, and it's what keeps on making us generation of beggars and depending on white supremacy to save us. And this is something that the first president of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, really explained very well. You could look that up. And for your information, China is doing that currently in Africa, because as I mentioned in the last episode, Asian and white supremacy are very much intermingled. And what has happened with time is that colonial powers have just been distributed depending on GDP. Yeah. Okay, the next time I want to explain is imperialism. Imperialism is the creation of ideas, policies to colonize and neocolonize people. And this is exactly what the 1885 Berlin Conference was all about. It was forming the ideas to execute colonization and long-term neocolonization. The story doesn't end there. White supremacy becomes bigger and it gives birth to racism. So we would say white supremacy is the mother and racism is the daughter, or is the husband and wife. I mean, they are very much close. That's what I'm trying to say. If you talk about racism, a common definition of racism is discrimination based on race or origin of a person, and it does go deeper than that. Racism forms how we view and see each other, because through its mother, white supremacy, it's engraved in almost all structures of our lives. And before you come at me and tell me, nah, we have no racism here, please just listen and maybe you'll find out how we do have racism in Africa and in Kenya. Racism has been divided, guys. Racism can be divided or has been divided into institutional racism, interpersonal racism, internalized racism, and systemic racism. I'll start by explaining internalized racism. Internalized racism is whereby our thoughts and feelings towards others are consciously or unconsciously biased. And this can be seen through the stereotypes we have towards each other. For example, through colorism. And colorism is where you prefer someone of a lighter skin to a darker skin. Did you guys know that in the slavery era, there was the paper bag test? And what the paper bag test was, how close you resembled those brown caracters used to cover meat, the better treatment you got. And some of us call this picking of who is prettier, the light-skinned or the dark-skinned preference. But which in itself, I'll tell you, it's so much distorted, because preference is based on what? Preference is based on the white supremacy system that pins us against us. The next form is interpersonal racism. This entails how we treat each other based on our social classes, and this can clearly be defined by classism. And classism is whereby the rich are respected and the poor are undermined. And amongst us, classism has been formed as a result of white supremacy's ideologies of success, where we are chasing to get that car, that house, that specific area to live, and what you do together doesn't really matter. Who you had on your way there also doesn't really matter. And true to the system, you're rewarded despite the means you get to the top. You feel more deserving than the lives that struggle for shelter, that struggle for daily bread, that struggle for healthcare. You move to Karen, for instance, or the city, and all of a sudden, you start thinking, matatus are too dirty for me. Why is that? Why is it that they're too dirty for you, but for someone who lives in the slums of Gashororo, they deserve to be there? People who never decided their life, but were born into it, and it created by white supremacy. I've said it before, you can't solve public problems with private solutions, and now I'm gonna add, white supremacy makes you think you can, and it's a big ass lie. The next form we have is institutional racism. The next form we have is institutional racism, institutionalized racism, which is the policies and practices that enforce racist standards within an organization, such as a workplace or a school. In Kenya or in Africa, this is portrayed through tribalism, through nepotism. And when I talk about tribalism, is whereby you favor someone because they come from the same tribe as you. When I talk about nepotism, you favor someone because they are your family member, right? And a common phrase that we use to describe these two terms mainly is huyu ni mtu wetu, so let's support him or her, and neglect this other person because he's not your family member, he's not from your tribe, despite whether the person has skills or the person is competent. When all this is put together, then we talk about systemic racism, where prejudice, judgment, discrimination defines who gets it and who doesn't, and the it in this case is success. And this is actually where racism and white supremacy form their connection. where we see certain parts of the world, even regions, have proper education, proper healthcare, proper housing, proper governments, etc. Yet other regions lack these kind of systems. And we are convinced that this is okay and can be fixed by supporting capitalism. And capitalism is very much linked to our ideologies of classism. And I will tell you for free, that's another big lie, but I'll talk about capitalism maybe in a future episode. Remember also when I mentioned that 95% chance, there's a 95% chance that a kid will go for days without food in Kenya, and a 90% chance a kid in Western country will never know of hunger, will never know of a bomb explosion. That's it. It all comes from this ideology of systemic racism. Yes, guys, I think that's it for this episode. I hope it was informative. I hope that you've learned something and you're realizing your idea of unfairness has been rubbed on you. And understanding that and decolonizing will have you flourishing. So, guys, I hope you're choosing to be liberated, you're choosing to decolonize, and are learning every day. I also do have a diagram with a visualization of all these terms that I've spoken about on Instagram at forbetter254. So make sure you check that if you haven't. And if you have, thank you. I hope you're learning something. Please comment, like, share, let more people know about this, And until next time, remember to be a better Kenyan, seeking a better Kenya. Peace and blessings. Cheers, guys. Bye.